Welcome to Theme Weavers, your weekly wisdom for weaving yoga themes into your classes to inspire your students. We're your hosts, Heidi
and Farin. Welcome, Theme Weavers. We are going to look at how to deliver a Dharma talk and weave the theme of Yoga Sutra 2.9, which addresses one of the most fundamental fears that all living beings share, the fear of death. Bum, bum, bum. Or Abhinivesha through your yoga class. This sutra speaks to the deep-rooted nature of fear and the way it influences our lives, often without us even realizing it. We're going to go there today, so get ready to go deep. Did you see how I have to bring levity to that? I'm like,
because you're uncomfortable? Are you uncomfortable?
I'm very uncomfortable. Yes.
Ooh, I didn't know that when I planned this one that you were going to be uncomfortable. That's great.
Yeah. Well, in case this is the first episode you're listening to, check out episode 2 of Theme Weavers podcast for details and background on how and why to weave themes through your classes. And if you choose to use today's teaching on Sutra 2.9 as your theme while using the gift of our inspo sheet, please find a way to turn our voices into yours. Make this theme authentic to you specifically. Lastly, a quick friendly reminder that if you enjoy Theme Weavers and the content we've been sharing, leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow our show, and also find us on Instagram to keep up to date with some fun reels and posts. We are grateful to each of you who listen, and the more you share and interact with us, the more energy and excitement that is being sent to us, and more people can find us too. So you can help other yoga teachers by just leaving a review.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. So thanks. I'm actually really excited about this episode today, as I do tend to shy away from talking about death, most likely for the exact reason that the sutra says, out of fear, just like Farin had to throw on the bump because of fear.
Yeah.
But
Scary.
Have you taught this before?
No.
Great. I have.
Yeah. You told me about it, and I'm like, wow, cool.
Yeah.
Good for you. I could never. But maybe I can.
Maybe you can. Maybe my Dharma talk that I'm going to share with you, the way that I've taught it, will help you. And maybe you won't, but maybe it will help you think about it a little bit, so that way you can learn to get comfortable. So I have taught this a few times in the last year, and I'm always met with a lot of meaningful connections after class. So we wanted to be able to share this with you today. A quick disclaimer, obviously, when talking about death, we realize this can be triggering for some of you. So please take care of yourselves. Your mental health is more important than listening to our podcast. So if you want to skip this one, I promise we're not offended. But if you're open to it, I hope that I can address the Dharma talk in a way that makes you maybe approach it a little bit differently. So let's just jump right into it as if I'm sharing the teaching to you right in front of you. Okay. Sutra 2.9 is part of Patanjali's discussion on the 5 kleshas, or afflictions, that obscure our true nature. These kleshas include ignorance, ego, attachment, aversion, and finally, the fear of death. Abhinivesha is the instinctual fear of death and the clinging to life that accompanies it. It is considered one of the most pervasive and persistent of the kleshas because it's tied to our survival instinct. This fear is not just about the literal fear of dying, which of course so many of us have, including myself. I can tell you the exact ways that I'm terrified of ever dying. My dream is that I just go to sleep and I never wake up. That sounds like so beautiful, but it's not most likely it's going to happen, right? But it also encompasses our resistance to change, our attachment to what's familiar, and our fear of letting go. This teaching is ancient, yet it remains incredibly relevant today. In the time of Patanjali, people lived in close connection with nature, where the cycle of life and death was more apparent. Yet, the fear of death was just as powerful then as it is now. In modern times, this fear manifests in various ways. Our obsession with youth, right? Got to keep the grays from going gray. Our skin has to be tight and wrinkle-free. Our fear of aging. God forbid we look our age. Our resistance to change and our anxiety about the unknown. In our fast-paced lives that we all live, we often find ourselves clinging to the familiar, avoiding risks, and resisting change because of the underlying fear of loss or death. This can keep us from fully living, from embracing new experiences, and from growing into our true potential. The practice of yoga invites us to confront these fears, to understand them, and ultimately to transcend them. I personally see Abhinivesha manifest as anxiety, stress, or an overwhelming need to control our environment and the people around us. We see this fear in our reluctance to leave a job we dislike, our hesitation to end relationships that no longer serve us, or our resistance to embracing new opportunities. By acknowledging and working with this fear, we can begin to loosen its grip on our lives. One of the ways we can practice this is by embracing the concept of vairagya, or non-attachment, which we have talked about in a few different podcast episodes over the past 2 seasons. By practicing non-attachment, we learn to let go of our need to control, our need for certainty, and our fear of the unknown. This doesn't mean we become indifferent or apathetic. Rather, it means we approach life with a sense of openness and trust, accepting the impermanence of all things. Of course, practicing non-attachment and confronting our fear of death is not easy. It requires us to look deeply into our minds and hearts, to become aware of the subtle ways in which fear influences our thoughts, our actions, and decisions. It's a practice that asks for patience, that asks for compassion, and that asks for courage. One of the biggest challenges in our mind's natural resistance to change, right? We are wired to seek comfort and security, and the idea of letting go of what is familiar can be terrifying. But with regular practice, we can begin to soften this resistance. Yoga, meditation, and mindfulness practices all offer tools to help us become more aware of our fears and to work through them with kindness and patience. When we practice letting go of our fear of death and change, we open ourselves to a greater sense of freedom and peace. We become more present, more engaged with life, and more willing to take risks and embrace new experiences. This can lead to a deeper sense of fulfillment and joy. In our yoga practice, this might mean being more willing to explore new postures, to stay in a challenging pose a little longer, or to approach Shavasana with a sense of surrender rather than resistance. Off the mat, it can mean being more open to change, more willing to let go of what no longer serves us, and be more able to live with a sense of ease and grace. As we move through our asana practice today, let's keep Sutra 2.9 in mind. Notice where fear or resistance comes up for you, whether it's in a challenging pose, a transition, or even in Shavasana. Allow yourself to breathe into that resistance, to acknowledge the fear, and then let it go. In Shavasana, see if you can truly surrender, allowing yourself to rest deeply in the present moment without clinging to anything. What do you think?
I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. So, I mean, the idea is more just like not clinging. Like not clinging to life is like the big macrocosm. The microcosm is just like not clinging to a posture.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to cling to life because of the fear. We want to just be present in it. Just show up. Like, we know we will all die. Like, as scary as it is, like Talia will ask, my daughter will say like, oh my God, are you dying, Mom? I'll be like, yeah. She's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, so are you. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we're all dying. We are all alive and we will all die. That is a certainty. The one thing I can say for certain in this life, you will die. I will die. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. It's weird to talk about, but it's true. Every breath brings us closer to our death. But how do I want to live in that space between? Like, how do I want to show up for myself in all of these moments? And Shavasana is this practice of dying. It's corpse pose. We are literally meant to lie there and die so that way we can be reborn. When we roll over into our fetal position, we're being born again into this next breath. How do we want to live? How do we want to show up? How do you want to show up in your practice? How do you want to die at the end of your practice, metaphorically, so that way you can choose the way you want to live, right? We don't need to be afraid of dying. We need to choose how we want to actually live.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm on board.
Yeah?
And I think I needed it more like succinct like that for it to like land with me.
Yeah, I talk too much.
Like instead of being like afraid of dying, like living every moment, just like, oh, am I going to die? Am I going to die in the next minute? Am I going to die in 10 minutes? Like just living.
How do you want
And
to
then
live?
if you die, you die.
And how is every yoga practice an ending? So that way you can choose how you show up in that next moment, that new breath.
Yeah.
It's a new beginning.
Yeah.
Every breath is a new beginning.
Okay. I like it. Is that like one of the themes? I mean, not the themes, the thematic through line phrases? That could be.
Maybe. Could be. I like it. Every breath is a new beginning.
Yeah.
How do you want to show up with this breath?
Yeah. I like that.
I like that.
To add those to the inspo sheet.
Yeah, it's better than the stuff that I wrote down.
But let's read the ones you wrote down because maybe those are good too. So to bring your students back to the idea of Abhinivesha, or the fear of death, or rather like how to not fear death so much. You can say things throughout your class like breathe into the fear and release it with your exhale. Trust in the process of letting go.
Mm-hmm.
Notice where resistance arises and gently soften.
Mm-hmm.
allow yourself to surrender in this moment.
Yeah, I don't like any of them.
And embrace the unknown with an open heart.
Yeah, I hate
Okay,
all them.
so
You know why? Because when
what
I
did you
write
say?
these notes out for ourselves,
Mhm.
I'm talking to myself. I'm just typing versus like having a conversation. Because none of this is all continuing to be in Abhinivesha. All of these are me showing up as a fear of death because I'm not actually acknowledging what the theme is by any of these. I'm like teaching around it, right?
Yeah.
But like the thematic through line is really, how do you want to show up in this one breath? Right? We know that this yoga practice is a practice of endings and getting comfortable without clinging to that. But how do you want to live? How does this breath show? How can you show up in this breath in a way that you want to live?
Yeah. What if you said like
real?
It is. And what if you like in different postures were like, if this is the last time that you ever did Warrior 2, how would you want it to look? How would you want it to feel?
Love it.
Yeah.
We shouldn't tiptoe around what we're really trying to teach because we're uncomfortable.
Yeah. So this is the last child's pose you ever took. Make it feel the freaking best.
Yeah. How do you want it to feel knowing that this might be your last one ever? Does that scare you? Are you resistant to that idea? Do you want to like hold on to it and never let it go? Or can you be fully present in this child's pose, knowing it's going to end? And rather than fearing it and clinging to it, can you just be in it the way that you want to live? How do you want to breathe in this child's pose?
I love all that.
Me too.
So what would you use for like a peak posture? Is the peak posture Shavasana?
I mean, it has to be. It has to be. And it's not going to follow the typical bell curve, but it's corpse pose. And you're teaching about fear of death. Like, this is wild, but what if you do a Shavasana in the middle of class?
Ooh.
And then you do it again at the end, but it's almost like your practice is broken up into two halves. Half one, how does it end? And then how do you get reborn and start again? And how do you want to do it the second time around? How do you want to show up to be present in this time that you're doing it? Almost like the same class
you could do
twice.
It 3 times.
You did 3 times. You could do it 4 times every 15 minutes. You do like a short sequence, and every 15 minutes you die.
But do you start in Shavasana sometimes?
I do sometimes, yeah.
For classes?
So, but I'll make it an active. I usually make it an active Shavasana rather than a restful one. Like, can you lay in this corpse pose fully alert? Right? Like your feet are flexed, like you're trying to press them into a wall. Your palms, every finger is extended, feeling like the full extension from your arm. The neck is lengthened, the shoulder blades are pressing into the ground.
So I've taught it without being so active, just like literally like I'll be like, okay, whatever happened outside the yoga room before, in your day, during your day, leave it outside and just like, we're just going to die here on our mats right now. Like to just put all of that to rest.
Do you say we're just going to die here on our mats?
Yeah.
That's funny for somebody that's afraid of death and talking about death.
I know.
That's interesting.
Because it's like a lighthearted, like, let's die here on our mats.
Yeah, you're joking.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of real when you like tie it to this theme.
Well, it's funny because Shavasana is meant to be, the way that we tend to teach it, in like America at least, is like, it's your final rest. Can you let go of everything and just relax? It's actually meant to be very contemplative. It is a corpse pose, a posture where you practice the impermanence of our lives, that you are dying. You are laying here dying so that way you can begin again, like a rebirth.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be like, but that's uncomfortable. So we don't teach it that way. Nobody even calls it corpse pose. Lie flat on your back.
Yeah.
Nobody calls it what it really is. It's like one of those postures okay, so you're the exception. But like, how many people don't? Like most classes don't. They'll say Shavasana or in final rest.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the one pose that people say in Sanskrit all the time. That and Supta Baddha. I never say recline butterfly pose. I always say Supta Baddha.
Because it's fun to say.
Yeah.
So what about a pranayama? In death, you don't breathe. So what do? Practice holding your breath?
Kumbhak. Pause.
Kumbhak.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Or Durga pranayama with a kumbhak with each part. Combine the two.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
I mean, you could say like skull shining breath because like skull, like skeleton. You're dead. No, that's weird.
No, that one was weird.
That's a little too literal.
What about like a mantra?
No, because now my brain is singing a Fish song. Death don't hurt very long. Death don't hurt very long. Yeah. Oh my
Okay.
God. Could you imagine if
That
I was
could be
like,
the
today's
mantra.
mantra is death don't hurt very long? That's weird.
I could imagine it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have one. Like,
All right. Well, yeah, I like the 3-line phrases that we had, and like even that could turn into a mantra. Like begin again.
yeah. Or like embrace the impermanence, right? Or like embrace what makes you uncomfortable. Like I embrace what makes me uncomfortable. Because this, like you were so uncomfortable when we even said that this was the theme today. You're like, ugh,
Yeah.
right? Like embrace the things that make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think I even like made the negative into a positive, like we kind of did with our 3-line phrases of like live now instead of like thinking about death. It's like just live now, like the opposite.
You're talking about the resolution that makes you more comfortable rather than being with what makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Be with what makes you uncomfortable. Stay. Hey.
Okay. I can get on board.
Really? Will you ever do it? Not yet.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think, listeners? Like, have you ever taught this? Would you? Are you uncomfortable just listening to this? Like, is it more tempting to talk about the positives than about the fact that this is literally talking about the tangling of the mind that gets stuck in a fear of death when we know that we will all die?
Yeah. And I think it's different to think about like maybe yourself dying and being okay with like living in the moment, living for the now. But then what about thinking about like other people dying?
I don't know. I don't really think about it. So it's like I know people will die. I think I used to be sadder about it when I was younger. I think as I've gotten older, I'm just like, that's part of life. Death is part of life. It is literally the one thing I know that will happen to everybody in my lifetime. We will all die. I don't know how.
But what if you think about like your children dying?
I mean, I hope it's after me. I hope I die first.
Yeah.
But they will die. They will. And I don't believe in an afterlife. I just believe you die. Like, that's it. I like to become a tree. My ashes become part of a tree. But I can't control that. All I can control is the way that I live and show up rather than acting out of fear about the end that I know will come. Because I don't know when it's going to come. So how do I show up with full integrity in every moment the way that I want to be?
All right. Well, if this conversation inspired you to teach a class on Abhinivesha or fear of death, or just provoke some different thoughts, I don't know. Please download our pretty inspo sheet found at themeweaversyoga.com/episode 49, where we list out additional inspiration to help you take a class on this theme to the next level. On the sheet, we will include some inspirational quotes, some songs that bring the theme to life, and some mantras, mudras, the pranayama we listed, postures, shavasana. No spoiler there.
Death don't hurt very long. Death don't hurt very long. All right.
Ooh, and even a meditation to weave into your class.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up. How do we end it? As we come out of Shavasana and return to our seated position, take a moment to reflect on the theme of today's practice, right? You're curled up in the fetal position. Our Shavasana was a practice of an ending of our death. But now how do we want to live? Right? Sutra 2.9 reminds us that the fear of death is a natural part of being human, but it doesn't have to control us. By acknowledging this fear, by facing it with courage and compassion, we can begin to release its hold on us. Right? So how do we want to show up? As you come out of this fetal position, decide how you want to live. Be present in each moment. Right? How do you want to live? So that's it. Go to our website now, themeweaversyoga.com/episode 49. Links also in the show notes. Request the inspo sheet for Sutra 2.9 to help you bring this theme alive in your own voice and your own practice and teaching. Please reach out to us in all the ways. Let us know how this lands. How do you feel talking about death? Are you comfortable, uncomfortable? What's going on? We're here to support you in your yoga class preparation and delivery, but also like in letting us know how this stuff lands. We want to be able to support you. So tune in next week for our guest episode and final episode of season 2 of Theme Weavers. And until next time,
Whoop, whoop.
I know.
Cool. Until next time, we weave you in peace.
We weave you. We weave you. Death don't hurt very long.